Good morning, dear church. The perceptive among you will notice that I've changed my background since last week. Behind me is one of my favourite paintings, The Angelus, by the 19th century French painter Millet. A man and a woman are reciting the Angelus, a prayer which commemorates the Annunciation. In the 19th century, in rural France, village bells would ring 3 times a day, at morning, noon, and night. Sound familiar? To call people to prayer. It was a rule of life. The couple in the picture have stopped digging potatoes, and all the tools used for the task, the potato fork, the basket, the sacks, and the wheelbarrow, are strewn around them. In 1865, when he painted the picture, Millet said, "The idea of the Angelus came to me because I remembered that my grandmother, hearing the church bell ringing while we were working in the fields, always made us stop work to say the Angelus prayer for the poor departed." So it was a childhood memory which was behind the painting rather than the desire to bring faith to the attention of the beholders. Yet the picture expresses a deep spirituality and also a feeling and a sense of meditation in the stillness of the couple. I'm sure some of you will be familiar with it. And if not, why don't you Google it and have a closer look? So what does this painting have to say to us today? Well, with its reminder of prayer 3 times a day, obviously it draws us back to the trellis of a rule of life that we've been learning as a community, really for the last 3 or 4 years. But it also calls us to meditation. And it's good to let God speak to us through paintings as well as poetry and the Word of God itself. What I want to do this morning is to spend a few moments meditating on the first 3 verses of Psalm 40. For as you know by now, I'm drawn to the Psalms for their combination of holy worship and judgmental ranting, their profound humanity that resonates so strongly with us. Every day at the moment, we hear harrowing stories of those who have tragically had to die alone, without tender farewells, or without the sound of prayer. And we struggle to keep our compassion alive for the individual and alive and flowing as numbers and statistics threaten to overwhelm us. This crisis we're living in is a stark reminder of the aloneness of life. When we go through the door of death, it will be alone, even if we are fortunate enough to have loved ones with us. But first, like many verses across the Bible, this psalm tells us that in fact we will not be alone because the Lord will turn to us and hear our cry. Verse 1 says, "I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry." On the day of Pentecost, recorded in Acts 2, Peter declares to the crowd, "Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved." That's an invitation to every human being without exception. We may have to wait patiently, and neither waiting nor patience are marks of today's culture, but perhaps COVID-19 is obliging us to learn these things. But still, we only have to cry out to the Lord, and he will turn to us as he hears. And knowing this is such a comfort in this time of great fear and pain. The other day, I came across a book called Every Moment Holy. It's a book of liturgies for the ordinary events of life by a man called Doug McKelvey, who's part of the Christian artists community in Tennessee in the US. It contains liturgies for things such as feasting with friends, for laundering, which is American for doing the washing, which is a lot less poetic, for the first fire that we might light of the season. It's a book to remind us that our lives are shot through with sacred purpose, even when, maybe especially when, we're too busy or caught up in our busyness to notice. But the one that caught my imagination is a liturgy for missing someone. It seems so pertinent in these days when we are all missing someone. Here it is. "You created our hearts for unbroken fellowship, yet the constraints of time and place and the stuttering rhythms of life in a fallen world dictate that all fellowships in these days will at times be broken or incomplete. And so we find ourselves in this season bearing the sorrow of our separation from," and here you're supposed to say the name or the names of those from whom you're separated if you were saying this liturgy. And it goes on, We acknowledge, O Lord, that it is a right and a good thing to miss deeply those whom we love, but with whom we cannot be physically present. Grant us, therefore, courage to love well, even in this time of absence. Grant us courage to shrink neither from the aches nor from the joys that love brings. For each, willingly received, will accomplish the good works you've appointed them to do. Therefore we praise you even for our sadness, knowing that the sorrows we steward in this life will in time be redeemed. We praise you also, knowing that these glad aches are a true measure of the bonds you have wrought between our hearts. Now use our sorrows as tools in your hand, O Lord, shaping our hearts into a truer imitation of the affections of Christ. I think that's quite a beautiful liturgy. The second thing these verses in Psalm 40 tell us is that in the pain of our missing, whether of someone alive or someone who has died, that God's presence holds us tight and puts our feet on solid ground. He is real, church, and he is here. Or to put it another way, he steadies our fear, our loss, and our emotional disturbance, and makes us feel secure in a very insecure world. The verse 2 reads, "He drew me up from the pit of destruction, out of the miry bog, and set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure." The words recall Psalm 18, verse 33, which reads, "He made my feet like the feet of a deer and set me secure on the heights." This was a theme that was taken up by Hannah Hurnard in her famous devotional allegory, Hind's Feet in High Places. And the words recall also Jesus' parable of the wise and foolish builders, where he tells his hearers that putting his words into practice, as well as hearing them, makes a person completely secure in times of storm, like a house with deep foundations. So firstly, Psalm 40 tells us that God is with us at all times. Secondly, that he makes us safe. And thirdly, it tells us that having rescued us and stabilized us, he'll give us a new song that will encourage many others to trust him. Verse 3, "He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him." This is a poetic way of saying that he'll renew our confidence in him and in ourselves, and that we'll be able to tell others of how we've been rescued. But it's not just for us, our rescue. We're told that those we tell will believe and put their trust in God. What an encouragement. Church, I want us to hope and pray that in this worldwide lockdown, when so many things that have been taken for granted are being stripped away and support structures are crumbling, we might be able to help others by singing our new song, as the psalm says, and telling of the rock where it's safe to stand. And there's no better time to do this than the resurrection season of Easter, which offers a new beginning. Jesus has broken through death. And as Eugene Peterson puts Hebrews 7:25 in the Message, Jesus' priesthood is permanent. He's there from now to eternity to save everyone who comes to God through him, always on the job to speak up for them. The risen Christ prays with us and for us as we speak to others. We don't pray or speak alone. Of course, the offer of new life is held out every single day. But at Easter time, with visions of the risen Christ fresh in our minds, the message of new life sounds its clearest and brightest clarion call. So, dear St. Aldate's family, let's sing our new song wherever we may. Have a good day. Bye-bye.